Hey friends, hope all is well out there. Exploring a beautiful area. It's amazing how it's getting dark pretty early. I'm out here looking for lion's mane and other beautiful mushrooms. Of course, the mushroom season is just going to start winding down, and just wanted to get out there and check things out as the leaves drop and the colors all come in. It's always such a beautiful honor to be in the Northeast in the fall, because the weather changes so beautifully. It's really powerful. So feel free to join in the fun, ask any questions y'all have, share your wisdom. We create the portal for open communication of any sort. Pretty open. Last night we talked about all kinds of shamanic fun stuff, ayahuasca, drinking plant medicines, legalities of those. I posted that, actually my proposal for the ability to actually not be able to say that any plant is a drug, and require through legislation that all pharmaceuticals must be considered as drugs by doctors. I think it's a great idea. The plants told me to tell you all. So feel free to help in the near future to make that happen. I posted that. You can see that on my on my page, on my Facebook page somewhere. Wow, so beautiful. All the different colorations of the leaves. Of course, it's really important to recognize that the reason that the leaves are turning colors is because the energy, the sugars, are being sucked all down into the roots again, and there it will lie dormant until spring, and then the spring, all the root energy, all the energy that was stored in those roots will again be brought up the trunk of the tree and produce leaves. Those are called deciduous trees. The most profound thing about that is that at that time, when the temperature goes from warmer days to cooler nights, that's when it's called that the sap runs. That's where your maple syrup comes from. So that's only because through the lignins, the fibers of the actual tree, the sap, the liquid flows, and it's all through the cambium layer. If you know about the tree, the outer bark, the inner bark or the cambium layer, and then the heartwood. And the heartwood is actually known to be not alive. Of course, no cells in nature are not alive. We know better than that. But it's not growing tissue, right? The growing tissue is actually in that cambium layer. And then of course, when you have growth rings, when you cut a tree and you see those growth rings, every one of those growth rings show that a new layer is born every spring. So you're actually looking from quite a Native American word perspective, meaning it's going through seasons, not years. So it's springs. You're looking at springs, right? Every spring it comes. It says the connection is not so good, so hopefully we'll either be able to find a good spot or the world will end. Hey Jeff, how's it going? Hope all is well. But I think that's so important, that understanding of trees and their cycle, because everything in nature has a cycle. I think our food, our diet is really screwed up because we don't have a cyclical concept of eating. You know, we have this absolutist religious idea of food where it's like, this is the diet for all people, for all times and all circumstances. But if you embed yourself again in nature, you'll realize that the seasons are also going on in your body, and everything that you crave is inherent in your body for specific reasons. And the only reason that we are not following that anymore is because we're using fossil fuels to heat our homes. And once you use fossil fuel to heat your home, you no longer crave the specific diet. You know, we basically force our homes to be 70 degrees all year long. So it's okay to eat ice cream in the middle of the winter because your heat's on 75. But in a more traditional setting, or really a setting without fossil fuel, we would suddenly realize that our craving is seasonal. What we crave throughout the year is due to the seasonal shifting. So that's one of the things our species has really lost lately, with the ability to go to the grocery store and buy whatever you want, and the ability to just turn your thermostat. So it's a very different thing. Hey Joe Todd, hey Tara, welcome to the portal. I'm just looking at these vining plants growing up all these trees. So Jeff asks about cow's milk. Any animal's milk other than human milk? You know, it's a really difficult question. Of course, you know, I had this kind of comment on my Instagram just today about someone was saying, you know, veganism is the best diet. Of course, the best diet for who, at what season, in which location. Without those, you can't really have that conversation. Is cow's milk hormonally, you know, right for human bodies? Not exactly. But is an avocado? You know, avocados are for mastodons. So we have to look at a lot of factors when we consider what is a correct diet. And basically what we need to consider with a diet is, I think, something that's local. You know, and if we look to the local diet, then everything has a secondary purpose. You know, primarily you must eat food that keeps you alive. And that includes carbohydrates, fat, and protein. If you don't get fat, protein, and carbohydrates, you die. That's as simple as it is. So, however you can get that from a homesteading perspective and a do-it-yourself perspective is determined by your location. You know, there's not a lot of avocado trees here in New Jersey. The winters get very harsh. If I want to continue to use fossil fuels to heat my home, right, then a certain diet will reflect that. Hey there, I think it's back on. That was a word from our sponsors, which was a word for silence. So hopefully you enjoyed your prayer vigil and you're back. Hopefully, I didn't say anything, so you didn't miss much because I saw it go off. Let's see. The forest and Wi-Fi signals don't agree very much. How's it now, friends? Oh, and here comes a nice motorcycle. Because the only reason you would go into the forest is to dirt bike, right? So, yeah, I was basically talking about the kind of idea of cow's milk or other milks. It's really just a matter of trying to create a cross comparison of what's relevant towards where we live. And, you know, eating genetically modified soy milk is not healthy, nor is it sustainable, nor is it ecologically sensible. So almond milk is full of preservatives. If you use almonds to make your own almond nut milk, almonds are not exactly sustainable either. You know, so a lot of people are really up on the cow farts thing, and it's a really grave situation. And cattle farming is really disgusting, and the large-scale milk production is also really disgusting. It's a really huge issue, but it's not a black and white issue that, you know, some documentary is going to solve for us. It's a really big deal. And so I think the question is, have you ever grown a soybean farm, and have you ever, you know, had a cow? So a soybean farm is not going to enable you to get very much soy milk. You know, it takes a lot. Oops. So it takes a lot of land, you know, to grow soybeans or almonds. Almond monocultures are extremely damaging, detrimental. So there is really no clear answer, but I just want to get people thinking about those issues. I don't think there is one diet for all people on the planet, because all ecosystems are different. They can harbor very different things. So maybe a local option is, you know, nut milk from But if you start making nut milk from acorns, you're going to realize how long it takes, how many hours that is. And again, you know, we spend a lot of calories, you know, we trade calories for fossil fuel. So there's a conversion there that a lot of people don't think about very often. If you're not pounding those nuts and doing all that practice or process, if you buy it in the grocery store, someone is. So some thoughts about all that. It's a huge question, but don't believe that anybody has some, you know, religious diet that's called the X or the Y diet, that if you follow, you'll save the world. It's not that simple, not at all. Yeah, my bad, the connection is so sucky. I hope some technological breakthrough is ripe to happen, which gives kind of free Wi-Fi for all people. Yeah, so Pima mentions this movie Cowspiracy, which has some really radical, intense facts. He's saying 660 gallons of water to produce 1 quarter-pound burger. Here in Cali, they ration water. Now that is supposed to be enough for one person to shower for 3 months. So yeah, statistics, you know, it's like if you watched any Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton, you know, it's just basically a statistical farting match. But you have to understand where those statistics are coming from. Stats in itself is called a soft science because there's always a bias when you poll. So whenever you're polling a demographic or an audience, you always have to consider that unless you specifically were asked, a clear demographic was not made, because the only way to get a clear demographic of an audience is that you have all the people voting. That is one thing that the internet can revolutionize, is if we had true democracy, we would all cast our votes on any particular issue, and that's indeed what we're kind of doing here in a way. So as I understand, Cowspiracy ends up with a sort of soy patties or something as the solution to cattle farming. Now, those are not one-to-one situations. Cattle farming is really bad, but you know it's not. Buffaloes. North America used to be full of buffaloes, you know, and they were all shot. Those buffaloes are not nearly as damaging as cattle, you know, so I don't eat cows. I don't really think that cows are very necessary as a quote-unquote product in North America. So, you know, the question is, what is the alternative? What are the options? You know, how can we feed all people in the world? Again, I don't think there is one answer to that. I think there are many answers and there are many solutions that need to become present. You can't just live off of, you know, kale. So you need fat, you need calories. This is something that's often disregarded. You know, kale does not have fat, you know, so where are you getting fat? So we can be vegan, for example, and we can eat a lot of coconut oil, which I do, right? But then where's that coconut oil coming from? Is it really sustainable when we have possibly child slave labor, or they actually enslave monkeys to actually crack our coconuts to drink that nice coconut water, right? And get that coconut meat and the coconut milk, you know? So is that sustainable? You know, and what we do as a society is, as long as we think something's better, we don't bother to look into it, you know? And once you look into it, you realize, man, cattle farming or enslaved monkeys, you know, what's better? So we have this huge ecological issue, and a lot of it is due to how populated we are. Yeah, Janice mentions buffalo are being farmed, but they're not allowed to wild graze anymore, and that's the thing we lost. You know, I was listening to a Native American activist from the 70s, you know, 80s and 90s. His name is Russell Means. He was a very insightful person. He's who took over I can't think of it right now. He took over an area in the Standing Rock area, and he had mentioned how the Great Plains was like the Serengeti of North America. So that's basically the Sioux and other tribes would just follow the Great Plains, and that's where they would get a lot of their meat, right? So meat in question it's not like, oh, do you eat meat or sprouts? It's really, where does your meat come from, or where do your sprouts come from? And how can anybody be ethical or sustainable in the society that we live in? And that's really something that we need to address. Tara mentions overpopulation, and this is something I had a huge conversation with people on the Return to Nature website, and a lot of people were arguing that any addressment of overpopulation means getting rid of people, quote unquote. And what I really realized from that conversation is overpopulation is pretty much a first world problem, meaning that when people of the first world have children, they take 90% of all the resources, where somebody in Ghana could have 20 kids and not dent the amount of energy burned of one child like us burning all this energy to webcast to each other. So it's a really interesting question to kind of talk about overpopulation. And what I realized is that overpopulation needs to be coupled with basically resource sequestration, and as Gandhi said, there's enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. And so we probably do have enough. We probably have enough for 10 billion people on the planet, but not if we're going to create scarcity and sequester and poison natural resources and hoard them and corporatize water, food, air, oxygen, things of that nature. So that makes a really huge difference when we're talking about population, is how are people actually using the resources that we have. And so it looks like overpopulation when you have 1% of the world, domineering 99% of the resources. Then of course anybody born looks like a travesty. So we really have to try to understand all of that together when we're having these issues. And I just want to bring up a point that I see over and over, is that life is not simple enough to boil anything down to one issue, and I see that happening over and over again, where we're getting caught in a certain, one word answer. Like, for example, not meaning to pick on this at all, there's benefits to each thing, like veganism. Okay, if everybody turned vegan, then we wouldn't be in this mess, right? Or if we got rid of all the cows, nobody would be in this mess. Or if nobody used gas, we wouldn't be in this mess. Like, we're going to need such a radical plan of all-in action. It's going to take all of that and so much more. So let's just remember to try to be on the same team and not get caught like Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, which are just basically finger pointing. When anybody asks them a hard question, they just start talking about how bad the other person is, and that's just crap. That's not very intelligent. That shows a sign of weakness in your arguments. So we need to be careful as a community to be able to discuss contrary ideas without just belittling each other or fighting or arguing or using noise as our tactic of communication. So the only way we're going to get anywhere as a society is if we can actually do that. As people are saying, hi Sarah, I know what will happen if I don't say hi to you. Was that you yesterday? Janice says elk was reintroduced and caused problems now for farmers. Yeah, but is the problem elk, or is the problem that barely anyone is eating those elk? And how do we know how many to eat, and how is it sustainable? That's really the larger question, So it's starting to rain here actually beautifully, so that means more mushrooms will be coming, and I'll hang with y'all, but I might lose service. There's enough for everyone's need, but not enough for everyone's greed. I think going into this as the United States, people of the United States, we the people activate and rise up and become conscious, we have to remember nonviolent resistance. We have to remember the words of Martin Luther King and Gandhi. We have to understand how to be on our best behavior. There is no opposition. We include all. We cannot fight our way through anything. We have to just continue to express education and teach ourselves and teach each other. So that's really the goal of Return to Nature and my quest with all the work that I'll be doing in this life. And may we rise up together. Many blessings to you all. I'm gonna go enjoy a little rain shower. Thank you all. Reduce your wants, as Janice says. Yeah, definitely. If we all reduce our wants, and really stick to needs and try to understand the difference between wants and needs, So I think as a whole, materialism is dying. It's pretty obvious. People have storage units full of shit they don't look at or need. TVs, think about it. It used to be there was like 4 TVs per household. People don't have that anymore. That day is coming to an end where the false promise that materialism will cause you happiness, it's just not there anymore. It's just not there in anybody. So that's something we can rejoice, is that we're getting over the idea that saturating ourselves in material will cause happiness or a sense of well-being. It surely doesn't. The statistics, no matter which statistics you look at, show that people are not satisfied, people are not happy, people are working long hours and suffering. So that is a sign that a change is imminent. That we have to change as a society, and change she must and change she will, because that is the nature of nature. So many blessings to you all. I'll be in touch soon. Blessings.